Hi, welcome back.
Okay, there's a red light. Goes. Okay, thank you, sweetie.
Okay, so let's start. Let's just see if
I think
anybody
it's
else
okay.
is toddling in from the parking lot. Okay, we're on. Okay, so everybody pass around the green. And I'm just going to turn off the cell phones so that we don't...
Good evening, Professor.
Good evening. Oh, hello,
Oh, boy.
Marty. How
Okay.
are you?
All right, so what we're doing tonight, and many of you have heard me drush. Drush meaning, and by the way, look, I'm going to do 2 or 3 just introductory things that we haven't done before. I'm going to go over the top bar very, very quickly. I usually spend 15 minutes on this. This is going to be 90 seconds. 70 CE, temple goes down. All the rabbis say, what now? Where are we going to be able to discuss all of our oral traditions we've been passing? So in 200 CE, 130 years later, all of our oral laws, how do we do this? Which way do we bow? How do we hang a mezuzah? How do we shake a lulav? How do we do all of these things that were passed from generation to generation, get written down in the Mishnah, and that is the law. And then, of course, what happens is you have a constitution. And everybody says, what did they mean by that? So we establish Supreme Courts and lawyers and people discussing. In the year, I'm actually going to study a piece of Jerusalem Talmud. I've never taught a piece of Jerusalem Talmud here. So in the year 350-ish to 350, somewhere in there, the Jerusalem Talmud is put together. And that what we have is we have the Mishnah with a lot of people discussing things. What does the law really mean? Right? You can't eat anything on Yom Kippur. Okay? Everybody clear what that means? How many questions would you have about what I just said?
None.
No questions?
No.
Ask.
What about the children?
What about the children?
What about the
What about the
elderly?
sick? What about a pregnant woman? What about... Look, you know what? At my father's... my father is still the cantor at the Baycrest Home for the Aged. 400 people, he's the youngest at 86, comes in, and the rabbi there is a diabetic, and he takes his, what's the
Insulin?
No, he takes a drink,
Oh, a drink.
right, and cracks it open at the height of Yom Kippur, and drinks it, and says, now take your medicine. Right? So all of that is contained in the discussion, the Gemara, the Talmud. And then when we had a little time to breathe, when we weren't under attack, the rabbis took a lot of the Mishnah and a lot of the Talmud, which is a lot of spilling of ideas and thoughts and memories, and they put it into stories and into some kind of order, and they have rabbis arguing with each other. We'll see this tonight. And that's the Babylonian Talmud, called the Bavli for short. And that's generally what we're going to study, and we're going to start off by studying one of these tracts.
So what do we use?
We use the Bavli by and large. Every now and then, the Babylonian Talmud, that's what we use. Because it's written, there's a redactor, there's an editor. And the editor has taken different stories and arguments and placed them, and there's even a voice that says, and our tradition sides with rabbi. There's actually a voice there, like a writer, basically guiding us along through many of these discussions. The Jerusalem Talmud is just, there was a rush to get as much discussion down as possible. And I have a few volumes of this in my office, but the big 70 or 80 book set that you see in my office is the Babylonian Talmud, stripped down to line by line, and the different... so that's the initial discussion. Of course, I mentioned that there are 2 types of things that we will find, 2 types of discussions that we're going to have in the Talmud. One is Agadah, which Agadah is very close to, again, Haggadah, to tell stories. Now, mostly what I'm going to be doing with you is Agadah, is stories. Because these stories are at the core of who we are as a people. So last week, what did we do last week? I'm trying to remember what we did
That
last week.
one with Akiba in the classroom with Moshe.
Right, Moses visits, is time travel to Akiva's classroom, and Moshe can't understand a word. He's sitting in the back in the 8th row by the outhouse, right? And he doesn't understand a single thing, and God brings him back to Mount Sinai 1,500 years later, and he says, God, what just happened? And he said, well, you heard him. He said, All of these things are inspired by Moses, and Moses is comforted. If we took Rabbi Akiva and plunked him in the middle of Times Square, you think he'd know what was going on? Or even in the synagogue, do you think he would know what was going on? It's all in the name of Moses. Second one we did last week was, when does life, should we prolong life unnecessarily? And we told the story of the woman who takes, everybody's praying that this rabbi's not going to die, and she takes a vase, and throws it as far as she can. It crashes against the building. People say, "Oh, what was that?" And at that moment, then the rabbi feels that he's broken with the prayer, with the parishioners, and he goes off. We learn from this, we don't prolong life unnecessarily. This week, we're going to do 2 more agadot, plural. Halacha is how do we do this law, right? And we're not going to do much around that. Next week, by the way, we're going to do some there are X-rated in the Talmud, but we're going to do a couple R-rated stories in the Talmud. So there'll be an 18 and over sign at the door, or maybe 36 and over, we'll see. But next week will be a few R-rated stories, and Bill and I will be assembling a few of them. Okay. What I want to actually, I'm going to let you be the judge today, but a lot of the times in the Agadah, the rabbis are trying to teach us a lesson. Right. What were they trying to teach us last week when Moses gets shot into the classroom of Rabbi Akiva? Aside from historiographical, just the general philosophical point.
Things change.
Torah changes, right? The words remain the same, but circumstances that it applies to changes. And the woman throwing the vase, the rabbis are trying to teach us. I'm not sure if that happened. I'm not positive. But I think they're trying to teach us don't prolong suffering unnecessarily. So we're going to learn another lesson, and I want you to be the judge of whether Torah comes first and the rabbis are actually expanding a lesson from the Torah, or the Torah, they're trying to teach us a lesson, and they will use the Torah as what we call a proof text. Who says you can make that statement? Oh, it's written in the Torah. So we're gonna actually go right away to page 1. I actually have the pages numbered with a marker. So we're gonna go to page 1. And I'm gonna begin, now what comes first, the chicken or the egg? I'm gonna decide it's the chicken today. So we're just gonna make a decision. And we're gonna read from the book of Deuteronomy, Devarim, near the end. One of the punchlines of the entire Torah. And I'm going to give you first the proof text. And let's see where the rabbis go with this. You tell me afterwards whether it's the chicken or the egg which came first. So somebody want to read on the bottom of 1. This is from the second of last or third of last parsha of the entire Torah, fourth of last, when the Moses and God are trying to give us the punchline of the entire Torah. Somebody want to read from the bottom of the Shirley? Betsy, who is going?
There's no Shirley here.
That's a good word.
I know. Oh, it's the first. Oh, I was looking around.
Well, frankly, Shirley.
God, these Canadians and their accents.
The first word.
Right.
Not Shirley.
Okay, so Betsy, Shirley, or no, Shirley.
I answer to the name.
Okay, you answer. Anybody that's go. Okay, somebody want to read?
Surely.
Yes.
Or should I say surely?
Surely.
This instruction which I enjoin upon you this day is not too baffling to you, nor is it beyond reach. It is not in the heavens that you should say, who among us can go up to the heavens and get it for us, and impart it to us that we may observe it. Neither is it beyond the sea that you should say, who among us can cross to the other side of the sea and get it for us and impart it to us, that we may observe it. No, the thing is very close to you, in your mouth and in your heart, to observe it.
Okay, this is Torah. This is not Talmud. It's written in the Torah. This is in the scroll, and basically it says, this Torah stuff isn't that. You don't need a master's in theology, right, to figure this out. You don't need a rabbi. I'm giving you my interpretation. You don't need a great chacham to tell you this, right? It's not that. You know the difference between right and wrong. You know what's right. It's not baffling. You don't have to climb every mountain. You don't have to swim across the sea. You don't have to climb Mount Everest on the top what all the jokes, you know, I want to go see the guru, and he climbs up to the top of the mountain. There's many jokes, right? But yeah, we don't in Judaism have to climb Mount Everest or Kathmandu or whatever it is to get it. Okay, now the key word here I want to show you is in Hebrew on the top, just on page 2, and the first letter gets cut off. But Marty, do you want to just? It's you see an aleph on the top left-hand corner. Okay, so there's a lamed that's missing. Lo, lo, bashamayim, he. Lo, it's not. Bashamayim, shamayim is the heaven. He is referring to the Torah. The Torah is not found in the heavens. And I'm going to add, you're not going to find the Torah in the heavens. Who lives in the heavens? God lives in the heavens. The Torah is not found with God. The Torah is found at the board meeting and in the parking lot and in your discussions and in what we do around this table. That's the message, or I'm drushing a little bit, but there's 3 words there. It says the Torah is not found in the heavens. Okay, now what are we going to do with this information? And now we're going to go to the Talmud. The Talmud, this comes from the book of Baba Metzia. You'll notice next to the 3. And Baba Metzia generally deals with contract law. And we'll be doing some things around contract law. For example, how long should it take to pay a laborer? Anybody know how long it should take to pay a laborer?
By the end of the day.
By the end of the day. What happens if he's on work shift, if he's on night shift? You know, there's a whole... Like, for example, if we said you have to pay the laborer on the same day, okay, what would you say? What happens if he works a night shift? What happens if the guy who writes the checks is at a... You know, so this is what the Talmud's all about. But today we're going to talk about contract law, and the Talmud goes off on a little tangent, as you noticed, as it is apt to do. So let's read, and the following Mishnah. You guys in?
The following Mishnah alludes to...
What's a Mishnah?
Law.
Law. The following law,
well,
right?
Before law.
Okay, yeah.
Alludes to an incident in which a Tana...
Everybody remember what a Tana is?
A wise man?
Tana were the guys that participated basically in the writing around the Mishnaic times. And the guys that existed around this time are called Amoras, like Moreh, like a teacher in Hebrew. Okay, just while we're here. Okay, keep going.
In which a Tana was offended. After quoting the Mishnah, the Gemara relates the incident and how quickly his prayers were answered.
Okay, so let's go.
We have learned there in a Mishnah. If someone cut sections for an oven and put sand between the sections to cement them together, and the oven then came into contact with tuma.
Keep going.
Rabbi Eliezer declares it tahor, but the sages declare it tamel.
Okay, so
So
tameh.
mine.
So you know what? I always get this wrong. So I always get this wrong.
You did pretty well considering.
Okay, so tahor, I believe, is not kosher, and tameh is kosher. I'm always get this wrong.
And tuma is like,
Tameh is
no, tuma. Is in contact with tuma?
something. Oh, something.
Or something unclean?
Unkosher.
Okay.
A mouse, a sheretz, or whatever it is. Look, it happened. It happened in those days. Okay. So what we have here is a discussion. I'm going to explain it in a second. But basically, what happens is that this Tana, there's a discussion that's going on about an oven, and what we're going to read is this oven it's sort of like snaky, and it has different compartments in it where different things can be going on in the oven. Why would this be an amazing piece of technology in those days?
No microwave.
It's equivalent. Could you, for example, potentially have milk going on in one section and meat in another? So you see how. Somebody comes up with a newfangled invention of a multi-deck or
Multifunction.
multi-function oven. So, okay, so that's how this story begins. Keep going. We're going to turn the page to 4. Okay, and this is the oven.
You want me to read it?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
That's what we got in my classes today.
Okay.
And this is the oven of the coiled serpent.
Okay, so basically he makes up an oven, probably something like this, and it's got sand between the layers, and so nothing's touching anything. I mean, I think this is what's going on. Okay,
The
continue.
Gemara explains what is meant by the coiled serpent. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, it means that they, the sages, surrounded the oven with discussions like this coiled snake, and then declared it susceptible to tuma.
Tuma, again, is...
Right?
it
Or you
is
say unclean? Is that
unclean, not clean, yeah,
Not-
ritually impure. Okay, ritually impure. Okay, so now we have a discussion. Now, you've heard me drosh this on Friday nights, but basically what you have is that I'm just trying to think of the sages. So we have all of the rabbis. I've done this on Friday nights. The rabbis on one side say that it is susceptible to tuma. And guess what happens? There's always, in Judaism, what happens? Does everybody agree?
No.
Okay, so let's continue.
But why do they take a case? They're trying to talk about the concept of separate sections of the oven. Why don't they take a case that's more clear rather than coiled? That would be the last part to start. I would take an oven that's divided in some way.
Wherever it happened, it
Yeah.
landed in here.
Yeah.
Because you will see in a minute that I'm not sure that what we're actually talking about actually happened. But they're just using an example
When
of
you
it.
take it specific, then it becomes specific.
Okay, so let's
You take
let's
a
continue. This is
generalization.
yes.
It's a metaphor.
Okay, well, let's see what happens here. Everybody remember what a baraita is, or a baraisa, as it's written here. A baraisa is some other book aside from the Mishnah that they're referring to, because there's lots of other people writing books of laws. And a baraita is somebody remembers. I like to say, and it's a colloquialism. It was on the cutting room floor. It didn't make it in some of the top volumes, but somebody remembers that there was a teaching, a saying in somebody's book or in somebody's teaching. That's a baraita, and it generally has a very high standard if you're trying to prove a point. So go ahead.
A baraita tells us about the debate surrounding this oven. A baraita taught on that day, Rabbi Eliezer advanced all the arguments in the world to defend his lenient ruling.
So he says probably that the oven is
Oh,
kosher.
clean.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
kosher. It's clean. Okay.
So that's probably what
Tameh.
tahor means.
Yeah.
Tahor means clean,
Rabbi Eliezer, tahor means clean, and tameh
or
means
ritually clean.
and ritually unclean. Okay.
And tamai is not.
Tameh. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's continue.
But the sages did not accept his arguments. Rabbi Eliezer said to them, if the halacha accords with me,
Halacha, the halacha,
The
the
law.
law favors me.
let this carob tree prove it. Whereupon the carob tree was uprooted from the place and moved 100 amos.
Yeah.
And
I'm
what is an
I'm
amos?
assuming it's 100. I don't know what.
A distance.
A distance of 100. I'm not sure if it's. I'm not sure if it's like a hand
Inches, yards.
Yards. I'm not sure. But let's just say that it moved down the street. Okay.
And some say it moved 400 amos.
Oh.
Unconvinced, the sages said to him, you cannot bring proof from a carob tree.
Okay. So hang on. Okay. So hang on a second. So what happens is, who is Rabbi Eliezer summoning to show that he's right?
The Torah.
Who?
Who?
Right? He says,
The
if I
carob.
am right,
The carob tree.
we're going to break the laws of natural science here, and that carob tree is going to go and down it goes over there. Who's the only one that can make that happen? So I'm telling you that God is with me. Okay, that carob tree just took off, and the rabbis say, Nice parlor trick, or whatever it is you did there.
If the
But-
water canal crew moved through
Okay, so let's keep going. Now we
How,
have
what, where do you read that? Because I say, he says, whereupon the carob tree was uprooted from its place and moved. He doesn't say who, how, what. I mean, it could have been by.
All right, Rabbi, so who has the power to bend the laws of natural science?
Yeah, but it's not saying who moved the tree.
This guy's an engineer.
Okay, okay. Whatever happened, the laws of natural science are and we would
Or
not.
withheld.
Look,
He suspended
This
it.
Look,
is left brain, we
if
have
it-
to think with the right.
okay, if this thing all of a sudden jumped up and moved across the room, you would say,
Amazing.
whoa,
Yeah.
something funny is going on around here. So let's continue. So there's another proof that's going to happen here. Go ahead. Who wants to continue? Next.
I lost my place.
It's
And
Right
some
here.
say
Where is it?
Right here.
unconvinced.
And of course, by the way, we can't even agree. We can't even agree in the Baraita, by the way, Jewish people, how many amot it moved. Some say 100, and then another. Who cares?
One.
Okay, so, but we have to get in the minority opinion because there's two guys sitting at the table, and they're arguing this point. And Rabbi Bela Gittel says it was 100, and somebody else says 400. We don't care, but they have to get it in there. Keep going.
He then said to them, if the halakha accords with me, let the water canal prove it. Whereupon the water in the water canal flowed backward. The sages said to him, you cannot bring proof from a water canal.
Okay, so same deal, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden the brook is going, and all the laws of natural science. Eliezer is summoning he's getting proof from the big guy on the fact that he's correct. That's what we're reading into. That's a traditional read. Keep going.
He then said to them, if the halakha accords with me, let the walls of the study hall prove it. Whereupon the walls of the study hall leaned and were about to fall.
Okay, get this? All of a sudden, the walls start going, and they start crushing inwards. Okay, keep going.
Immediately,
Yehoshua.
rebuked the walls and said to them, if Torah scholars vie with one another in discussion about halakha, what business is it of yours? The
Of whose? Of whose?
The walls.
Of God's.
Gods.
Okay.
The walls did not fall out of respect for Yehoshua. But neither did they right themselves out of respect for Rebbe Eliezer. And they still continued to lean this thing, and that was the Leaning Tower of Pizza.
By the way, just before we go any further, it's very interesting that it is possible. I'm going to throw this out there that somewhere in Israel or in Tiberias or in Babylon, there probably exists a yeshiva somewhere where probably the walls have sort of come in, or maybe they weren't properly, David, they didn't properly have, don't eat ahead. They didn't have a proper back, and whatever happened, somebody's made an interesting, I'm speculating here, or this really happened. You be the judge. Keep going.
The Rebbe Eliezer then said to the sages, if the halakha accords with me, let heaven prove it. Whereupon a heavenly echo went forth and proclaimed, what argument do you have with Rebbe Eliezer, whom the halakha follows in all places?
Hold it. So,
That's the punchline.
So God, do you read this? God comes down and says, rabbis, Eliezer is right on these things. What are you messing around with him? You want to read that back again? Make sure I'm not interpreting here something you don't agree with. Want to read that again?
Whereupon a heavenly echo went forth and proclaimed,
Heavenly echoes who?
God,
I'd say so. Okay.
what argument do you have with Rebbe Eliezer, whom the halakha follows in all places? Upon hearing this, Rebbe Yehoshua stood on his feet and declared, if the Torah is not in heaven.
Okay, read it.
We don't need you here.
Right. Law, what's it say? And he quotes, and what, by the way, you can't talk to God like that. You better have some of God's words in your mouth before you tell God to
Bugger
off. Bugger off.
go away, respectfully, please. So, and what is the word that's used? Read the Hebrew, Marty. What's the Hebrew? When it says, it is not in the heaven, lo hashamayim hi. Now, either the rabbis are taking off on this very interesting concept that the Torah is not found in the heavens, or when we're looking for an excuse to or a proof text, They've scanned through the pages and they said, oh, here's a good one. And this proves, right, that who decides issues of humanity? Think about this again. Who discusses and decides and makes halacha? Is it humanity or is it God?
In this case, it was people.
Humanity.
So why should you listen to any of them?
Well, God gives us the mission statement. God gives us the laws. God gives us the direction. God gives us the 613 mitzvot. But how you work it through day by day, look, we're sitting around
It's
sort
your
of...
business.
Is humanity's a business.
This-
We did last week. When is the right time to end life? Right? When is it? What are all the things that we have to figure out as human beings? What's kosher? It doesn't say anything about cheeseburgers or what does it say in the Torah? It says, don't cook a kid in its mother's. All of a sudden, we're into cheeseburgers and don't have milk in your coffee. I'm not saying these are wrong, but who creates 90%? Who creates 95% of Jewish law? People. Yeah. My cousin called me today from Montreal. He's standing in the middle of the cemetery, and he's saying, "What does the Torah say that I should put on my mother's gravestone? My aunt died a year ago." And he says, "What page should I look up in the Torah?" I said, "It's not there. Just I'm telling you what the custom is. How many we bring platters for Shiva. We put a shovel in the. All these are customs. It's humanity that creates. Anyway, let's continue here. So okay. So now we got problems here. Theoretically, somebody just told God.
No, but
what would
says
Rabbi
something.
Mann have said to this? I mean, what is his response to
I don't
something like
either.
this as an Orthodox rabbi?
He said he taught me this. So
Well, it says though, for the Torah was already given, and whatever was there was precise.
okay,
Now interpretation,
it's up to us. It's up to us. It's up to us. You know what? I want to tell you.
but that's a jump though.
We're
I
just
don't
saying
want
we
to
shouldn't
take that.
interpret.
It
We
doesn't
shouldn't
say
say-
that interpretation is
Let's
allowed.
continue. Let's continue, and let's go to the end of
It says
the end of the
it's
story.
precise.
Let's go to the end of the story.
I said precise. You don't
Who's
say
gonna continue? So now we've just told God to go, please. Because I'm being recorded, I'm not going to say take a hike. I could say something else stronger, but basically, we've been told, please go away, O Almighty One.
Let's handle this ourselves.
Let's go. Continue. The Gemara interjects. Okay.
The Gemara interjects. What is meant by "it is not in heaven"?
Rabbi
Rabbi
Yirmiyah
said, it means that we pay no heed to a heavenly echo in matters of halacha, for the Torah was already given to man at Mount Sinai.
Okay. Keep going.
The Gemara relates to the rest of our Yeshua response to the heavenly echo. Because you already wrote in the Torah at Mount Sinai, according to the majority of matters shall be decided. And since the majority of the saga disputes, sages dispute ours,
Rabbi.
position, his position is rejected in practice.
Even though God agrees, kinda, with Rabbi Eliezer on the matter of whether this was kosher or not, who wins in the end? The majority of the rabbis and the people overruled God. Is it upsetting?
But
No.
You look a little upset.
Yeah.
You want God to be...
That kind of disputes it because he says the incident highlights Rabbi Yehoshua's assertion. He didn't say that it happened.
But let's finish. But God has to weigh in. God has to weigh in on this topic. We haven't heard from God yet. God has just been told to go away. Now
But
finish.
it's being asserted.
Okay, who's going to finish the story? Who's going to finish the story? Rabbi Nassan. Later on, we're going to jump forward. Rabbi Nassan.
once met Elijah.
Who's Elijah?
The
Prophet.
Prophet. What do prophets do in our tradition? Every single. Better than that. Every single time that one of the prophets opens their mouth, who's talking?
God.
God's talking, right? God, Jeremiah, they can't help it. Whenever their mouths open up, God is speaking through them. They speak in different accents. They have different gestures or whatever. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Elijah, every time they open their mouth, you're getting a direct line directly from God. So this is not any rabbi or we've now injected a higher authority who's going to comment on this story on behalf of God. Let's go. Keep going.
Rabbi Nassan once met Elijah. Rabbi Nassan said to him, "What was the Holy One, blessed be he, doing at that moment when Rabbi Yeshua rejected the heavenly signal?" Elijah responded to him, "He, the Holy One, was laughing and saying, 'My children have prevailed over me. My children have prevailed over me.'"
Nice story.
Very cool. He says, you know what, my students actually reminded me again. And goes back to heaven. Okay, now, so this is, you've got that, you're looking a little perplexed. Let's understand, again, I'm going to go back to this, that the way that Judaism is practiced, and I said this last week, this is not a biblical religion. It is a rabbinical religion. I've said this 100 times again. There's a paper, and Marty and I were talking about it. I am delivering a paper to the board on Wednesday, which officially declares veal not kosher in this congregation. I don't like the way, and many, many rabbis don't like the way that veal is made to be white, it's malnourished, etc. And goose liver and duck liver, because the animal is bloated for the size of their liver. I have declared for communal meals, I have the right to do that. By the way, if you don't think so, then when my contract comes up for renewal in 10 and a half months, then you can say, Buster.
Your name is not Buster.
Goodbye, sir. We're going to find or to the extreme. I could declare whatever pork kosher, whatever it is, and as I said, for 14 minutes till the board would meet on a conference call and fire me. We are a rabbinical religion. It says in the Torah. I think I was talking about this with somebody today. It says in the Torah in black and white, if you have an errant son, a disobedient son, you take them where? To the gates of the city and have the elders stone them to death. That's the law. Right? And the rabbis say in the Talmud, don't do that. Don't do it. There's not a single case that I'm aware of in any of our tradition, even though sometimes we look at our kids and we say, where my father looked at me and said, where is that passage? But there is not a case in the entire Torah that we know of that anybody was stoned to death. This is why Torah remains vibrant, because sometimes we're actually instructed. And I have a book. I have a couple copies of a book in my office called Conscience, where Rabbi Schulweis actually makes the argument that the Torah tells us on numerous occasions, or the rabbi, disobey that law. You're allowed to have more than one wife, according to biblical law. Rabbis say, no, you can't. Right? No, you. Yeah. Sorry, I think Amal goes first.
When the Torah was given to Moses on the mountain, I don't remember what God said to him. Did God say anything to him about instructions on how to use this?
That's if you believe he received the Torah on Mount Sinai.
Let's say that
you're going to
it's
have to believe it. In this
let's say that it's the basis of Judaism, that something incredible happened 3,488 years ago. Okay, that's what happened.
At what point is man given the ability
Good
to
question.
reinterpret what God gave to Moses?
The tradition says that on Mount Sinai there are two Torahs that are given. The Torah and Torah. The Torah and Torah. Right? And the Midrash says the storybook of this, our collected ancient stories say Moses went up and had a discussion with God on Torah. And when Moses died, 2,500 laws went down with Moses. Like, in other words, he had all these customs and things in his head. Now, I'm just giving you what the Midrash says, and I'm not going to get into who wrote the Torah, why it's there. There's a whole history lesson and archaeology.
Why would they write something like that in the first place? Why would they write that you have to take your son to the gates and stone them? I don't understand the first concept. And
Let's try.
that may be cultural.
Because I'm going to be Rabbi Matt, because that's what it says in the Torah. But let's try to figure that one out.
Did anyone see on television last night about this preacher in someplace?
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Who basically
We
said
watch the
if
same
you-
programs.
Yes, we absolutely do.
What did he
There
say?
it is. Yes, there it is.
Some guy said.
The guy said,
And it got written
No,
down.
no,
If your
no, no,
kid-
no,
if your
that
kid-
I'm
one
sorry.
goes.
You didn't want
You're pulling a Freddy, you're telling half a story.
Right. It's some southern preacher who gave a sermon in which he said, if your son, even if your 4-year-old son, has a limp wrist, take the wrist and crack it. And then he says, punch the kid, to make sure that the lesson is pushed through. And he said something similar about girls.
So what does that have to do with this discussion? I'm a little lost.
Because
No,
somebody said
the
something
Torah,
really horrible
right.
3,000 years
Now,
ago, and it got written
this
down.
is one of,
and
by the
we have
way,
to take
this
care
is
of it.
one of the differences between Christian view of
to take
Scripture.
care
By the way, between us right now, if I said to you, and myself included, if I said to you, quote me a chapter and verse of anything in the entire Scripture, including a rabbi. What? I know Genesis 1:1. I know Genesis 5:1 because I know that I'm going to teach it to you afterwards. And I think that the Ten Commandments is Exodus 19:7. But we're not big into, in fact, it is in yeshivas, in major yeshivas, the parsha of the week, the Torah, it's seen to be gauche to study the parsha. The parsha is for the masses. We study the lessons, the halacha, the drash, the debates between what you're doing tonight, the debates between Daf Yomi, the debates among, and the common people can read that, and God said to Moses on. So in general, whereas the Christian people will look at I get emails every day or frequently from people from Australia and from Russia was saying, Rabbi, what does it mean when it says in the Torah, and thou shalt. So first of all, I tell them you're reading it in English and not in Hebrew, so that's a whole other thing. But Christian people in general want to be very literally correct on the Torah, whereas we say, it says that in the Torah, don't do it. Don't do it. I would suggest to you that they were trying to scare. And by the way, here's what the rabbis do on this topic. If it says a youth cannot, if a youth disobeys, na'ar. So the Talmud has a definition of when someone becomes a youth. What's the difference between a youth and a child? A youth, when it gets 2 pubic hairs, becomes a na'ar. That happens around 12 years old, or 12 or 13. That's why we have girls and boys in Orthodox have different bar mitzvahs. We don't want to split up classrooms these days because kids do this together. So we all say 13 for everybody. So we said na'ar, not na'ara, which is a girl. So now we've let all the girls off the hook. And by the time they're finished paring it down, it's hardly impossible, because they built so many rules around it, that a child cannot be stoned to death. The rabbis take precedence. And who do the rabbis get a lot of their instruction from? In a funny way, the people.
Their wives.
Their wives. Somebody says Patty is the rabbi's rabbi. So, okay, so this is just a story that I wanted to convey to you on really what our tradition says is that this is a rabbinical religion. It's a rabbinical religion. It's upsetting because you want the law to be the law. But there's very little written about anything. Tell me something. When are you supposed to bury a person?
24 hours.
Where does it say that?
Unless,
If a man is hanging,
Right, so Malka, you know this.
yeah.
It doesn't say that you have to bury somebody within 24 hours. What it says in a couple pages earlier in Deuteronomy, it says that there was a murderer or somebody, and they hung him by a tree. And someone said, take him down and bury him on that same day. The rabbis say, if you bury try not to use the word schmuck, but if you bury a no-goodnik on the same day, surely you should bury a good person to not expose their body to whatever it is out in the world.
So it's a tradition.
Yeah.
Everything is a tradition. And the beauty of the Talmud, and the beauty of having discussions like this, and talking in my office, and going into the yeshivas, and to have all these wonderful conversations, is that because we're not linked to some misperception of the word, we have a dynamic religion that follows often the majority. Yeah.
But if you look in the Shulchan Aruch, the Kutsu Shulchan Aruch,
Right.
on that same subject, they say,
Kitzur Shulchan Aruch means that this is the code of laws. They took the entire Talmud and went and put it into a tight little. Kitzur means short, and it's written about 1500 somewhere.
Yeah. And he says, but if it brings honor to the deceased, that you delay, you can delay, such as one of his children is distant and can't
Has to
get
come in
there
from Boulder,
time.
Colorado.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But Marty, that's the rabbis
Yeah.
again interpreting. So we live very much that's why you have to choose your rabbi, your movement, whatever it is, very, very carefully, because you have to interpret in a just, sane way. And are you still upset?
No.
Okay. No, you go ahead. Okay. So this is a wonderful story about how it's up to us to, in a way, to decide our own laws. There are laws, but there are changes to laws. I want to give you just one more law. It says in the Torah, in the Talmud, that a woman may be called to the Torah, it says, but she may not read from the Torah out of kavod hatzibur. Kavod, respect. Hatzibur is the congregation. A woman may not read from the Torah out of respect. And we've been through this before, okay? Is it this class that I've been through this before? Okay.
Yeah, well,
Somebody argued with me about this, but it says kavod hatzibur. Now, the Orthodox will say, it says there, that a woman should not read from the Torah because it embarrasses the congregation. Who's the congregation?
men.
Okay. And the conservative movement says respect of the congregation is different in the year 2012 as it was in the year, take your pick, 500 CE. So conservative Judaism says we have an obligation because the word respect is a moving target.
Back
So-
then, could men have more than one wife? Between 500 700?
I believe so, yes.
So men wrote the laws.
Yeah. By the way,
Duh.
there is evidence, by the way, that in this period of time around here, there is evidence that women were involved as synagogue presidents, as leaders, et cetera, et cetera. By the way, and the conventional wisdom on this is that men went off to war, farming, fishing on the high seas, and women did not go to their law practice or to their teaching careers, and they studied Torah. The way that it used to work is that you used to call 7 people to the Torah. The first person would say, Asher b'charbanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato, and then 7 people would come up and read. And then at the end, the 7th aliyah, they'd say, Asher natan lanu Torat emet. So what you had almost like a bracket of, and women would come up and they would read. And this is how it was taught to me, and it was embarrassing to the men that they could read and not everybody else could. So we say here that it's embarrassing when we go to a conservative congregation and the women are in mechitza, are not able to. I consider that I'm embarrassed by that. So the word embarrassment, or kavod hatzibur, respect for the congregation, conservative and Reform Judaism says it's a moving target. Orthodox say, who the heck are you, Rabbi Huberman, to be messing? And it's been said to me, who do you think you are that you can change what's written in the Talmud? Who are you, Mr. You had smicha for 20 minutes. You know? So that's where these wonderful discussions. Now, who's right and who's wrong? You make the decision with your feet, which way you're going to go. You know what? The Orthodox are right, and we are right. And there's a saying. Elu divrei Elohim chayim. These words and these words are both the words of the living God, and God does not get involved in the minutiae of life. Yeah.
But some modern Orthodox congregations do have women participating in services.
Correct.
A service for the women.
Correct.
Where the women read the Torah, the women daven,
Right.
the women call everybody up. I've been to 2 family bat mitzvahs where that happened.
Right.
And it was held in a separate room,
Well, that was the whole thing.
and
Yeah.
I sat and observed behind the mechitza because there was a mechitza for the men. But there was something very interesting. There were only 9 chairs in the mechitza because
Right, because you had
if you had 10 people, then you would have a minyan and you'd have to daven. So if 9 people were there and a couple other family members came in and wanted to see what was going on, 2 people got up and went upstairs to the other minyan. And
That's fantastic.
So this is really very nice, except that it has very little meaning because it's still the same. It's still the same that women's doing this is inappropriate
so-
and embarrassing to the congregation being the men.
So Malko, what we are doing here is having a holy discussion that began on Mount Sinai, where we were given the law somewhere up there, and it is it's lo bashamayim hi. The law is not in the heaven. It doesn't say anywhere out of God's mouth, if God has a mouth, that men should be here and women should be there, or they shouldn't. Who made up all this stuff? Who decides that there should be a mechitza or not? Who decides? It's communities, it's democracy. I love this. Like, it's at some level. What?
I'm saying it's not democracy when the men are the only ones who make the rules.
I will discuss this.
Let me ask you a
I'm on
question.
camera, so I'm not going to tell you something.
To give some sort of verification, is it possible because the education was different and the women would embarrass the situation because they could not read?
No, the
No,
men,
no,
men made up the
that's
rules.
it.
No.
No, I understand
But
what
I
you're
am
saying.
making a supposition.
You may be right.
Yeah.
What they say is that's a good, but usually when they're trying to be tasteful, a rabbi will say to you, like Rabbi Mann used to say, that's an interesting observation. You may be right. I like that. Or a Prouser will say, I like that. That's very nice. But she's saying that's very nice. But I actually believe that the idea of, we're off topic.
They were chauvinists.
But the separation of men and women is something that happened later on.
No, separation is different than the embarrassment. The embarrassment because they couldn't do it.
But who says that you can't? Again, they go to the proof text, which is located in the Talmud, and there's your reason why you would do it. I would say to you, respect for the congregation. By the way, one last thing. There's another area where respect for the congregation is mentioned. You'll notice when we can't find the place up on the Torah, every now and then we get lost and we can't find it. I turn to Bill and I say, read off the sheet. Because there's another thing it says is that don't make the congregation wait. It's disrespectful to the congregation. Not only that, but they look up and they say, those guys know what they're doing? You know, who do we put in charge here? They don't know. And it lowers the overall confidence.
Esteem.
So I just say, Bill, Gustavo, just read off the sheet. Let's go. And nobody knows the difference. It's a lot better than waiting 15 minutes to try to find the... Okay, let's go to section 2. You are going to be studying something that's short. but you're going to be studying something from the Jerusalem Talmud. It's very, very rare that something is in the Jerusalem Talmud and not repeated in some. So we're going to go now again to the proof text. I'm going to read to you, and this is from this week's Parsha. Okay? And who wants to take it's page 5 off of the package? Okay? And it begins with because of him. Everybody got it?
Yeah.
And it says,
You shall.
keep going, let's go. Actually, let's read this together. You shall not take vengeance or bear grudge against your
countrymen.
Here we go. Ready?
Love your fellow as yourself.
Okay.
I am the Lord.
Okay. Now this is called, what do we call this in contemporary terms? It's the golden rule. It's the golden rule.
Do not.
And what's that?
Do unto others.
It does not say anywhere, do unto others as you would have it. These are all, and by the way,
Interpretation.
Google golden rule, and every single religion has some variation of this. There is a fellow that the Christian people quote. His name was Yehoshua, the son of Yosef. Everybody catch that? The son of Yosef and Miriam, right? That says do unto others or whatever. This is all a variation of love your neighbor. What's it say?
Love your countrymen.
Ahavta l're'echa, to your neighbor, kamocha, as yourself. That's what the Torah says. Okay, beautiful, very important, right?
Next portion is very interesting too. About
Where are you going? Oh yeah.
you shall not let your cattle mate with different.
I was just.
This
looking
whole
at that.
section, by the way, and this is enough.
Yeah,
We're not
yeah.
studying Parsha now. We're studying Talmud. Okay. But and if you keep on going, it says a man may not lie with, and we won't get into that whole. Look, a man may not lie with a relative or many other things, and before and after, there's lots of prohibitive sexual practices, which, by the way, we read on Yom Kippur in the afternoon. Okay, so I want to just give you a proof text again, like I did with love your neighbor. Love Hashemayim He. Right, love your fellow as yourself. Next, I want to go over to 6. And just the first 6 words or 7 words. This is the record of Adam's line. Okay, so let's go to page 7. And don't read it yet. This is a debate amongst the rabbis on what is the most important line in the entire Torah. I've given you the hint already. But if we were to ask, just take your eyes off the page, give me some great lines. Just think for a second. And if you freeze and you freak out, just think a little bit. Think again. What are some of the important lines in the Torah?
I am the Lord your God.
I am the Lord your God.
You out of the
Right. I am the Lord your God. Whoa. Okay. Right. Observe the Sabbath.
This is the fast that I want.
This is the fast right. That's from Isaiah, but still, it's good. This is the fast that I want: to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, take in the homeless whenever you see them. I love it. That's great. Great stuff. Right. My favorite, of course, is from Micah. Is do justice, love goodness, and walk humbly with your God, or some variation of that. That's mine. But generally, and one of my favorites also is, and God saw what God had done, and it was good. The world is good. Right? If we sat here all night, you come up Shema Yisrael, and Denilah, there's a great debate. What is the most important? What's the foundation of the entire Torah? What's the most important line? So generally, when I ask this of kids or of an adult class, if you didn't have this text in front of you, you generally would agree that it is on love your neighbor as yourself. It's the golden rule, right? There's no other God like me golden rule. That's and it was good. A lot of you will argue. I believe that the world is getting better every single day. I'm just looking at your eyes. Okay, I believe that because it's based on and the world is good. I believe that the world is getting better every day, and we'll have that discussion another time. But so I believe that that's a beautiful line. Now we have a debate in the Jerusalem Talmud on what is the most important line in the entire Torah. So you think that we're going to have consensus on what the important line of the Torah is? We're Jews. How do you do? Okay, so it's just a short one. So Beth, you want to read this one?
Sure.
And you shall
Love your friends as yourself. I am Hashim.
Yeah, Hashem. So let's stop there. So, by the way, Hebrew, again, you're going to ask me about the translation?
No, I'm going to say that back then, they even had Viagra.
Yeah, I noticed that too. That's Vayikra, not Viagra. That's an interesting spelling.
It's all in the pronunciation.
All right, this is going to have to go for editing. So okay, all right. Okay.
It's all your fault.
By the way, I just want to know. I'm going to say this again. One of the reasons why that we debate Hebrew so much and nobody has the proper translation is that English, again, is a specific language and Hebrew is an interpretive language. Again, if I say shalom to you, what did I just say?
Peace.
Hello?
But what did I just say to you?
Shalom.
Okay, right. And translate that in English. You have no clue. Right. Now, by the way, if I say shalom, maybe I'm leaving, or I walk in and say, so everything, it's an interpretive language, right? Shalem actually is sort of like full. Shalom is peace. If I say shalom, so everything in Hebrew is interpretive. You always have to look at the context. So when they say, and you shall love your friends, what's the word in the text here? Love your neighbor, right? So somebody has taken the word re'echa and has changed it because it can be used in. So it's just interesting that if you go into the Google and you look up, Psalm 15.3, it will give you 30 different Bibles and 30 different subtle translations of where that translator. So very rarely do we get the perfect translation. Molly Karp teaches that when she does her section. Be careful on translations, and that's a whole other thing. So continue.
Rabbi Akiva said, this is a great principle in the Torah. Ben Azai said, this is the book of the generations of Adam. This is a greater principle than that.
Stop. Okay. So let's get the debate. Rabbi Akiva lives approximately 1900 years ago, 2,000 years ago. And Ben Azai, by the way, he doesn't even have smicha, right? Rabbi Akiva and Ben Azai, his name is Shimon, Simon, the son of Azai. He doesn't even have smicha. He's a great student. And by the way, I believe that Ben Azai wanted to marry Rabbi Akiva's daughter, so they studied together, I would imagine. And Rabbi Akiva says the most important line in the Torah, the foundation, is honor your neighbor as yourself. Honor your friend as yourself. Ben Azai says, nope. The most important thing is that we are all, this is the book of the generations of Adam. Translate that. What's Ben Azai saying? Go back to the text. Yeah, try.
We're all related.
We're all related.
Yeah.
We're all
The
related.
first one is just saying my friend, which means us.
Talking about the generations.
Yeah, he's saying that he goes back to Genesis 5:1. It's the only other line in the Torah that I can actually quote. It's just at the beginning of a chapter. But it says, go back to your text here. It says, chapter 5, this is the record of Adam's line. By the way, when I read that line, I don't get that we're all connected and we're all one big family of humankind. But when Ben Azai is going back and actually wants to make a point, he goes back and he tries to find a proof text, and he goes and he picks a line out of the Torah, which I'm not sure is the way that it was intended to actually, when it was written. But whatever it is, Ben Azai quotes the Torah and says, I want to make a point here. So let's articulate. And by,
It's not only that you respect only your neighbor or your friend, as yourself. Since we're all connected, we should respect everyone.
what's the limitation of
Neighbors are just like
Respect? No.
But what, friends?
neighbor? Let's go to
No.
neighbor. I like neighbor better, actually.
But-
So what's the problem with honoring your neighbor as yourself as being the foundation of the entire Torah?
I don't care about the people in there
Across
or
that
there or
bridge
there.
whatever.
Neighbor could be your tribe, not necessarily the people on the other side of the mountain.
Only be nice to Jews.
Could be it,
Right.
God bless America, or God bless...
because they were tribal then.
Yeah, but neighbor could be a neighboring country.
No, but even Ben Azai
But
was...
as I figured out something a little bit different.
Yeah,
Which
that's
is
right,
more
yeah.
inclusive. Because even a neighboring country is,
Neighbor.
it's a
Watch out,
neighbor, but
Italy.
it's not over there.
Yeah.
They didn't have
Global
countries, they had
view, I think.
tribes, didn't they? They had a community.
No, in those times, they already had the country. There were villages, and there were identifiable tribes, but generally there were two countries. The northern tribes. Mind you, by this time there was just the southern tribes left the area around. There was no Israel
Did it
nation.
apply to the Egyptians? Did it apply to the Sumerians?
There's a number of texts on this. I'm just going to see if I
I
have.
don't think it did.
But when Azai was referring to...
What do you think?
When Azai was referring to this...
Section of the Torah.
Section
Yeah.
of the Torah, he's saying that, no, it's not. Let's go back, this is even more important, is knowing that we're all from one
So you
place.
see, but Ben Azai is trying to make a point, and what he does is he goes back into the Torah for a proof text, which I'm not convinced is what God or the biblical author was thinking about, but he says, here are the words of the Torah, and I'm using that to trump your point
I
of view.
think the fact that the Torah was written that way by whomever, that there was a single ancestor. It was written that there was a single ancestor. That, historically, it may not have happened that way, but in this text they've written it's a single ancestor, then we're all related. I mean,
Therefore,
I think that was the intent of the original drafters of the Bible.
But isn't it a false argument? Because these people are deciding which is more important. And does it really have any German aspects of it? No. They may all be important. How can you give more weight to something being better for who?
It's the
Well,
view
because
that he's
one is
arguing.
Yeah, but it's so
and the
that
other
it's
is
just
moral.
really, it's the individuals who are rabbis who want to show their knowledge and want to show some aspect they understand better.
Well, we're all
making
from
a
Adam,
ruling.
which means we're all from humanity.
okay.
And that's
Making a
what he
ruling,
said.
it's
So let's apply this. Let's apply this to
Eternal bonds of
2000.
humanity.
I'm going to apply this to
We
2010
didn't read it yet.
or 2011. We all watch, and I'm watching elections now where people are getting very tribal, right? Let's see, that person is a Mormon, that person is from the Bible Belt, that person is godless, that person has God, that person has, and no, seriously, we're going back, or even in the Jewish community, I'll only keep my ethics when it deals with my own tribe, or somebody that's even on the Orthodox. I don't want to get into this whole discussion about ethics, but we seem to divide who we're nice to and who we're attentive to. And I would argue that Rabbi Akiva's point, although he has the best intentions, it's a beautiful thing that he's referring to in the Torah. Love your neighbor as yourself. It's a beautiful concept. Look, I should care about you and everybody here. But what they're actually doing is creating kind of a phony philosophical discussion here. And Ben Azai says, hey, I want to make a point, so I'm going to take your sweet little point, I'm going to give it a shot, and I'm going to tell you we should love everybody. So when a tsunami hits in Japan, or an earthquake, hits in Japan, that's my neighbor too. And it's not just Glen Cove or Long Island or
The Jewish people.
or northern, or north or the south or whatever it is. So I love this, that even though this is the section that's in the Parsha this week, that you should honor your neighbor, it's beautiful. I'll probably, when I go back to my desk, I'll probably write something about it. But I love the fact, but watch what the Talmud, I'm not sure that Ben Azai sat over there and Rabbi Akiva sat over there and they went, and they went back and forth. But you see how the redactors of the Talmud take two guys, right, with two concepts, and they go, and they put it together. In the Jerusalem Talmud, in the Babylonian Talmud, you notice, by the way, in Jerusalem Talmud, it's very, very short and to the point, and there's no rebuttal. So you'll find that in the Babylonian Talmud, that what will happen is that one guy will say one thing, we'll get to this next week, and the other guy will say something else, and then the other guy will rebut, and the other guy, and then it says, and the Gemara sides with Rabbi A and agrees with him, etc., etc.
You know, I must say this, I just don't believe that back then they had the universality of humanity. I don't think so.
You talking about in the Torah?
The people back then. I'm not sure whether they had this universality of humanity and how they look at other people and other tribes.
And yet, here Ben Azai went back to the Bible to try to show that this was what the intent was, even though people didn't have the technology to go into space and look at the world being a one globe isolated. They didn't have the technology to talk to one another across a few miles away, 1 mile away.
You're absolutely correct, but
So
the intent could have been an idealism.
They still had an idea.
An idealism of
I tend
humanity.
to agree with you totally. I don't think that there was the humanity at that time.
What do you mean there wasn't any humanity?
When was
Humanity
Ben
in people.
Both of
was
them are
very
around
different.
1900 years ago.
Correct.
Ben Azai, according to something I read, and it may even be here, that Ben Azai, I believe, by the way, Ben Azai never marries. It's an interesting thing. And by the way, when we do, after we're finished the rabbinical series, we're going to talk about, or I'm going to have you actually research individual rabbis and their stories. Because next week, we're going to take a story in the R-rated section. We're going to learn about basically a gladiator named Resh Lakish, who looks around and sees somebody bathing and from the back and says, and the guy turns around and says, "What are you looking at?" So this is.
It's good that I missed that, Reverend. I won't be here. God is
We
giving me
wouldn't have let you in, David. You're far too young.
I'm giving you a little. So, by the way, to go and look at the different rabbis and who they were. Ben Azai, by the way, of course, doesn't get smicha. And also, you were supposed to be married as a rabbi in those days, which is one of the theories around Joshua, the son of Joseph and Miriam, is that what we read in certain testaments is unlikely to has some holes in it because rabbis married. But Ben Azai is one of the rare rabbis, and it's written up in the Talmud. He never got married. He just said, "I love Torah. I love studying it so much. That's my wife. That's my mistress."
Because it had to be fruitful and multiply. How do you go with did not marry and abide by the Torah and say be fruitful and multiply?
So
Didn't abide by it.
He didn't get Smita, that's why.
maybe that's one of the reasons.
I
yeah.
find it interesting that the two guys were of the same age, not age-wise.
I think they were one
Of-
generation
Of
apart.
the
Pretty
same
of the
time.
same age.
Of the same time.
Yeah.
And that Akiva, who was supposed to be a really wonderful guy, and who no doubt was, had somewhat less of a sophisticated global view than Azai did. And it seems as though if he was saying something like that, if it's true, there just seems to be this sort of more global coming into a larger sense of things.
But look,
It's interesting.
who's the real actor here? Like, let's look at the characters here just briefly. So you have Akiva, who has a lovely. He says, you know what? The foundation of the entire world. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Honor your neighbor as yourself. Hold it. We're Jews. Somebody has to have a dissenting view. Wait. Akiva's not doing anything wrong. It's a beautiful. Look, and the world is good. I'm not saying anything wrong. But so we have the second guy, Rabbi Akiva, and then we have Ben Azai, who puts these guys together in the same pit.
Talmud.
Yeah, the Talmud, the redactor of the Talmud. This is the guy who's trying to teach us something.
Mhm.
This is the Jerusalem Talmud.
This is the Jerusalem Talmud. We already have. There is a redactor. Somebody had to sit there with all these pieces of paper or parchment. So in a way, it's the redactor, which we may argue is the voice of the rabbis, called Chazal. Chazal is Chachamim, the sages. Zichron Lebracha, may they rest in peace. A lot of the times you'll see at the end of somebody's name who's passed away, ZL, Z-Chick-Chick-L, Zichron Lebracha, may their memory be a blessing. So whenever I say, Jerry Cohen doesn't like it when I say, and the rabbis say, so now I change it to Chazal. Chazal means the collective wisdom, that big nebulous ball of rabbinical wisdom that moves around. So I would argue that I'm not sure, I may be wrong, but I'm not sure that one day these guys said, let's go get some mead, and we'll have a discussion of what the most important line in the Torah is. But I think the redactor is trying to engage us in a conversation. And the redactor, I would argue, is probably is one with a global view. Because in those days, tribes and burghers and villages were all, very, very tribal. And somebody's got this vision. So he draws on something that he's quoting Ben Azai, puts him together in some kind of conflict or pseudo-conflict with Rabbi Akiva, and teaches us that all people are created equal, and actually chooses kind of a section of the Torah that I don't think that's what that means if I just read it as the pure text, but somehow finds the proof text to push Ben Azai's point of view to overrule Rabbi Akiva. Holy. Rabbi, that's, Anyway, I just wanted you to see how this week's Parsha gets churned into the rabbinical mill, and all of a sudden we get lessons for living and lessons for teaching each other and learning from each other. Yeah.
But there's no section of the Babylonian Talmud that sort of covers the same area.
This debate I looked for.
Yes.
It may exist, but I did some I've heard this before.
Yeah.
I know it's in the Mishnah, which comes the Midrash, which comes before the. I couldn't find it anywhere. I'm going to keep looking. Because I wanted to be able to take it right out of the Talmud, like I do with everything else, and I couldn't find it anywhere. But I did find it in the Jerusalem Talmud.
Now, when they wrote the Babylonian Talmud, did they have copies of the Jerusalem Talmud available?
I would imagine.
They Googled it and they had it available.
Yeah, because a lot of the times you'll get a law in the Babylonian Talmud, and you'll get a cross-reference to the Jerusalem.
Okay.
Often, most of the time. But for some reason, you're right. It's a good point. I may be wrong on this. Usually it pops up, and you can see it in Rabbi Google or whatever. I'm going to check with Rabbi Mann, who is a walking Talmudic Google, and he will say no, it's just in the Jerusalem, I think. And it'd be interesting if it doesn't make the cut, that maybe that's a statement that wasn't carried forward to this.
That's extraordinary that it wasn't.
I may be wrong, but I have a feeling I'm.
But if it's not, is that not extraordinary?
That's extraordinary. That the world vision, maybe it became a little bit more.
They didn't want to go there.
Maybe they didn't want to go there. Maybe they've been jaundiced by the Roman experience. Who knows? Yeah.
All these debates of the rabbis arguing the text, it almost seems like they're trying to make a living for themselves.
You agree with my wife on this topic.
Seriously.
Too much time on their hands.
But isn't it wonderful that we belong to a religion where people sit down and, as great philosophers and students of life, use the Torah as a launching pad for how does this apply to real life? Back to the beginning. This is not contained. This whole debate is not contained in the Torah. It is a manufactured human about halakha. Halakha means how to walk.
It's a discussion and an argument. That's what
it's
it
a
is.
discussion. It's an argument. And when we say lo b'shamayim hi, Torah is not in the heaven. Our discussions about ethics, morality, politics, shul business.
Now it comes home.
Music. See, music on Friday nights, right? Music on Friday nights. What are all the things that we debate as Jewish people on how to walk? When the Reform congregation, and we had a beautiful service here. When people came in and they didn't wear a yarmulke, right? What is the right thing to do? Should I have walked over to everybody and to say, put on your yarmulke? show me. Show me. I think it says, honor your neighbor as yourself. That when you walk into somebody else's building, you don't want to feel, because many times you'd walk into a Reformed synagogue in the 1950s and 60s, and what would they say to you? Please take off your cap, sir.
That happened to me.
Right, and how did it make you feel? Did it make you feel honored like your brother,
It was at my cousin's wedding, and my grandfather and I were wearing yarmulkes. And the guy came over and said, please take off your yarmulke. And we said, no. And he said, we don't wear them here. And he said, I know.
Okay.
And he said, I want you to take that off. And I rose about a foot above him and said, if you don't want to take it off, and you see this man here, my grandfather, he will not take his off. And if you bother us, you have me to deal with. And the guy shut up and went away.
And he was
Now, they don't do that.
No, the professor was a football player at MIT.
Right. So listen. So I thought about that. I'm just telling you how Judaism works and how rabbis work. It's a rabbinical. We all have a responsibility. Now, by the way, if 15 of our congregants would have come up to me and said that there's 10 people that came to our congregation on a Friday night saying God's word and they're not wearing yarmulkes, maybe next time we would have had a discussion on the ritual committee, or maybe we would have asked the rabbi there to say, would you please respect. But when someone walks into our synagogue as our guest, how did it feel when you were, we're not going to argue whether you should wear one or not, but the whole idea of how do we walk, halacha means how do we walk? Halacha, halech, to walk. And everything that Agadah teaches us is how to walk. What's our derech eretz?
How about married women wearing hat? You allow it here.
So
Some
it's a tradition.
conservative synagogues don't allow married women not to wear hats.
Oh, married
Our
women not to
congregation is founded on honoring each other, on bringing people closer. And you know what? If people feel, and it's another topic, that I'm too left-wing or right-wing or whatever, then we make changes. That's the ultimate democracy of a congregation. Like here, we change rabbis every so often because it's too left, too right, spends too much time in the community, not enough time in the community, too much time behind the desk, too much time out. His sermons are too short, they're too long. They're too studious, they're too light. It's a wonderful democracy that we live in, that you basically can choose your fate as a community by choosing the rabbi that reflects your. But I'm just going to go back to it again. The Torah is not found in the heaven. We have the mission statements, the Ten Commandments, or whatever. The Torah is found.
But all the black hats and black coats, they have the beards, they study Torah and all this stuff all their lives, and they don't accept the fact that what they're studying is not from heaven, but they're studying it themselves.
They don't study this. Like I said to you, they don't study the Torah that hard. They study halacha.
But halacha is made up of people.
Okay. So my view of halacha may be a little bit different than theirs. I'll just close with this. Rabbi Aaron Krantz is my major mentor. Says that when Moses went up, where's Mount Sinai? I erased Mount Sinai. When Moses went up on Mount Sinai, that God engaged in two types of discussion with Moses about the Torah. And one is things that God really cares about, and others were like circumstantial things of the time, like be careful when you walk in the desert because you may get sand in your eye, or so. There's some very, for example, it says in the Talmud, if you live in Babylon, do not put your Chanukiah in the front window. The reason being that in Babylon, if you said that you controlled fire, like the controller of fire was the controller, had more power, it was almost like godly. So when the Jews put fire out in their window, they were making a statement of challenge, divine superiority. So it says in the Talmud, as I recall it, and I'm quoting 90% correctly, when you light your Chanukiah in certain countries, don't put it in the front window. So I always say, this is my final thing, I always say there's a law that says that you cannot walk on the train tracks between Glen Street Station and Glen Cove. Why?
Get hit by a
hit
train.
by a train. No, 50,
You know
hold
how
it.
smart I was.
50 years from now, or 30 years from now, if they stop running the train, does that mean that you can't walk on the tracks between Glen Street Station and
Yes,
so?
because you said so.
No.
So a lot of times when people come to me with a ruling or for what to do, I actually think, what was God discussing with Moses? And if I think it's under the Moses category, then I try to follow it as much as possible. If I think it's circumstantial, like the respect of a congregation of women, then we have a discussion and we sort of tinker with it a little bit. Lo b'shamayim, the Torah is not found in the heaven. The Torah is found for us to work out ourselves and have these discussions.
Well, an absolute example, a perfect example of that is the fact that in India, they do not eat cow. The cow is considered sacred. But the